Hey everyone, Erick Stakelbeck here. Today on the Newscast, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visits Saudi Arabia. History made. Get all the breaking details and find out what it all means coming up. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. What happened in the Middle East on Sunday, November 21st would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, no one could have ever imagined that an Israeli prime minister would visit Saudi Arabia. But that's exactly what happened 2 days ago when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the northwestern Saudi city of Noem and met with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. We've got all the breaking details for you, history made here. Before I get into it, I just want to encourage you to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Folks, we're bringing you the kind of cutting edge, timely information that you just won't hear anywhere else, certainly not in the mainstream media. Okay, let's get into it. First, we'll give you the breaking news element of this story, and secondly, we'll break it all down for you and share our analysis on what it all means. Here are the facts as we know them. Israeli officials confirmed yesterday, Monday, November 23rd, and some Saudi officials, keyword there, some, more on that in a minute, also confirmed that on Sunday, November 22nd, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu flew from Tel Aviv to Noem in Saudi Arabia, where he met with MBS, the young Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Now, reportedly, Prime Minister Netanyahu was only on the ground for about 5 hours. Then he flew back to Israel, and his trip came on the heels of Secretary of State, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, also traveling to Saudi Arabia and meeting with MBS. Now, reportedly, Pompeo was not in that meeting between Prime Minister Netanyahu and MBS, but Netanyahu was accompanied by the head of Mossad, Yossi Cohen, and various Saudi officials, I'm sure, were there in addition to MBS. Now, what they discussed? Not too surprising. Number one, they reportedly discussed the Iran threat, and number two, they discussed the possibility of establishing formal diplomatic relations. They also reportedly discussed, if a Biden presidency happens, how they will deal with that. Obviously, Joe Biden has said if he becomes president in January, that he will re-enter that disastrous Iran nuclear deal. You know, that deal, as horrible as it was, folks, in a strange way, it brought Israel and the Saudis, the UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, closer together against this common Iranian foe, because the Iran nuclear deal emboldened and enriched the world's number one state sponsor of terrorism, the Iranian regime, and they began a long march, or I should say, they increased their march across the region at the doorstep of Saudi Arabia and these other Sunni Arab countries, which brings us to this meeting on Sunday between Prime Minister Netanyahu and MBS. Now, it comes on the heels, obviously, of the Abraham Accords, that historic signing back in September, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain signing a peace agreement with Israel at the White House. I was honored to be in attendance. Wow, I thought that was history. All along, though, as great as that is, and as great as it is that Sudan is potentially now making peace with Israel, the big one is obviously Saudi Arabia. It's the birthplace of Islam. Mecca and Medina, the two holiest sites in Islam, are in that country. And Saudi Arabia and Iran are kind of vying for the title of the leader of the Muslim world. So obviously, for Saudi Arabia to make peace with Israel would be groundbreaking and have huge significance. The Israelis realize that very well, and so does the United States. The Trump administration has been actively pushing MBS and pushing the Saudi government to come to the table and make peace with Israel. President Trump said a few weeks ago that he fully expects it to happen. Now, again, the key point here, if President Trump only has 2 months left in office, we don't know yet. This is all still being sorted out here in the United States. And if a Joe Biden becomes president, that is a major game changer, obviously. Is that momentum stalled with Israel coming together with these various peace agreements with Arab nations. You still have Morocco, Oman, and other nations out there, in addition to Saudi Arabia, that are at least listening very seriously to overtures for a peace agreement with Israel. And again, it all comes back to that Iran threat, but also Israel is blessing the world, right? We say it often here on the Watchman Newscast with groundbreaking high-tech scientific and medical breakthroughs. It's an economic powerhouse. It's a mini Silicon Valley in the middle of the desert in the Middle East. And the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 3, I think is very telling. And folks, I think that's what we see shaping up right now when God Almighty says that nations will come to your light and kings to the brightness of your dawn. That's what God says about Israel. That's the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 3. I think we are seeing that play out in real time right now before our very eyes. Now, this Saudi meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Mohammed bin Salman, at the end of the day, it was inconclusive, I guess you would say. There was nothing announced. No peace treaty was agreed to. It was kind of reminiscent of that trip back in 2019, another surprise trip, when Prime Minister Netanyahu visited Oman and met with the king there, who has since passed away. Now, one interesting aspect of the meeting on Sunday is that Saudi Arabia's foreign minister is denying that it ever took place. Other Saudi officials have confirmed the meeting, but the foreign minister is saying, no, it never happened. Folks, this is kind of par for the course. Over the past several years, every time that Israel has some kind of contact, serious contact with Arab and Muslim nations, there seems to come an official denial. This is essentially fear of their populations. The denial comes for domestic consumption. In the case of Saudi Arabia, they're obviously concerned about jihadists in their midst in that nation. They're concerned about possible Iranian retaliation, Turkey as well. So they're treading very carefully here. They are walking a very fine line. Think about it. Put yourself in their shoes. Not an easy place for them because of the radical element in that country. But if and when a peace treaty is eventually signed, obviously it will be out in the open, and people aren't stupid. Everyone knows what's going on here. We've been telling you here in the newscast for years now that Israel and Saudi Arabia have these under the radar, behind the scenes contacts going on in a serious way. So now for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit Saudi Arabia, it seems like it's just the culmination of everything that's been going on, not only between the Saudis and Israel, but with the other Sunni Arab nations. The Abraham Accords are in full swing under the Trump administration. What this is Israel and Sunni Arab nations coming together against a common foe that threatens all of them and threatens us here in the West as well, and that is the Iranian axis. The Iranian regime, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Assad regime, the Houthis in Yemen, these radical forces that threaten the entire region. Israel has allies now in the region. Imagine that will stand with it against these radical forces that threaten all of them. These Sunni Arab nations like Saudi Arabia, like the UAE and Bahrain and Jordan and Egypt, they know that Israel's not the problem in the region. They see Israel as the solution to everything that's going on in the Middle East right now, and chief among them, all of the problems in the Middle East, is that Iranian threat. Secondly, they see again Israel blessing the world, so why can't we be blessed? These nations are saying, why can't we take some of that Israeli innovation and ingenuity and have it benefit our people? Hey, better late than never, right? After wars and years of tension and refusing to recognize Israel's right to exist, they have finally gotten their wake-up call and they're seeing the light. I believe you can tell a lot about these deals by who opposes them, and that would be the Iranian regime, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Palestinian Authority of Mahmoud Abbas, and the radical Turkish President Recep Erdogan. That is who is adamantly against these peace deals. Folks, that should tell you something. These deals are very strategic in a good way for Israel, for the region, and for the West, because they further isolate Turkey and Iran. Remember, the Iranians want to reestablish the Persian Empire and dominate the region. Erdogan in Turkey has a similar idea, only he wants to lead a revived Ottoman caliphate. But the more Arab nations and Muslim nations that come alongside Israel, the more Erdogan's on his own and the more the Iranian regime is on its own in the region. It's a very good thing in a strategic sense, and it is prophetic, in my view, again, in a good way. We'll keep you posted on any breaking developments here, but make no mistake about it, folks. History made when the Prime Minister of Israel visits Saudi Arabia. Wow. But in the meantime, the other thing to keep an eye on is how does this all shake out in the next 2 months? Does Joe Biden become U.S. president? How does that change the calculus here? I believe if President Trump remains in office, you will see more of these peace deals. The great momentum that has been built over the past several months will continue to build and come to fruition. You'll see more nations come to the table with Israel. A Biden presidency? Unknown. The only thing we do know so far, the main thing we know about his potential Middle East policy, is that he would re-enter the Iran nuclear deal, and that would be an absolute disaster on many levels, as we've told you many times right here on the newscast. Hey, before we go, Christmas is right around the corner, right? The Christmas holiday, the Christmas season is here, and we've got a special Watchman newscast discount offer for you. Now, I talked about it last week here on the newscast, but I want to share it with you again. I know a lot of people, I know my wife is one of them, will be trying to take advantage of some of the deals this weekend and doing some Christmas shopping here in the States. We have a great partnership with Artza. Now, you might remember a few months ago, we offered the Artza box from Nazareth. Now, just in time for the Christmas holiday, we have an Artza box from Bethlehem, the place of Christ's birth. Folks, talk about a unique Christmas gift, a conversation piece. The Artza boxes are available now. Go to artzabox.com. Use that Watchman discount. It's Watchman18 to get 18% off your Artza box. And we showed you last week, I believe it was what? The November 19th Watchman newscast. Check it out in our archives where I did an unboxing. We had a lot of fun here on the newscast. We did an Artza box unboxing for the Bethlehem box. We showed you the great materials inside. Israeli products, authentic Israeli products made by Israeli artisans and small businesses. Folks, if you've never been to Israel, if you've been once or twice and just haven't been able to get back, if you're like me, you've been there a lot, but you haven't been able to go over the past several months because of COVID, this Artza box is a perfect taste of Israel, the Holy Land, delivered to your door. And you are fulfilling the biblical mandate to bless Israel. Genesis 12:3. You are blessing Israeli small businesses, artisans, entrepreneurs at a time when they really need it. Israel has been locked down and hurt very hard by COVID-19. So, hey, a great cause all around. Here on the Watchman, we only partner with companies that we believe in. Artza is absolutely one of them. It is for a very good cause, supporting the Israeli economy, blessing Israel for such a time as this when it's sorely needed. And hey, it doesn't get much better than authentic products from Bethlehem, the place of Christ's birth, during Christmas. So again, artzabox.com, Watchman18, very cool discount. I hope you can take advantage of it this Christmas, a very unique gift. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Until Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, we'll have a newscast for you still. Until then, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.